Hey Alyssa, check this out. I like the new audio. I think that you are on the right path. It looks good. So I'll just take this section by section like before and give you my thoughts, which I don't think I have a ton of stuff. It's more just about like pushing maybe some of the timing in places. But that is that. It's not that much. So let's take a look at it again.
Mom, wait.
I told you before. I don't want these things alone.
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
Don't speak to me with that attitude.
Okay, so let's talk about how she comes in and says, "Mom, wait."
Mom, wait. Mom, wait.
So the only thing I'm feeling about this is it feels really nice. It feels really good. But I'm wondering if she couldn't, or this character, I'm sorry if I misgender this child. I assume it's a girl, but maybe it isn't. I was wondering if they could come in a little bit faster. So, in the beginning, especially. So I'm kind of going to check out the spacing here. Because I feel like the character kind of comes in a way that's a little bit even, or it feels a little even. And maybe it isn't. But what I'm feeling is like maybe just for the first little section, maybe the first 6 frames, maybe their spacing should be a bit larger. So it feels like before they came onto frame, they were traveling at a much higher rate of speed. And that may let you get them into position a little bit sooner for the mom wait. Not that I feel like that's essential or anything. Just a suggestion. But yeah, if I look at the spacing through here, I suppose it is larger. But I guess I would suggest to make it even a little bit larger. Just maybe for like the first 6 frames, like I said. Yeah, anyways, it's a small suggestion.
Mom, wait. Mom, wait.
I also feel with like now the new read, that they feel a little bit calmer in how they're saying "Mom, wait," and so it might make sense that they come in and stop, that they come more to a rest before they say "Mom, wait."
Mom, wait. Mom, wait. Mom, wait. Mom, wait.
Yeah.
Mom.
And then, like if I watch some of the mechanics of the legs here, I think that maybe this needs a pass because the spacing on some of this stuff is pretty extreme. In fact, it feels like this leg is the same leg over and over. So I would just true up. And it doesn't mean you have to worry about your foot plants and your foot rolls and all that, but I would take a pass and just make like the mechanics of the legs like proper. You know what I mean?
Mom, wait. Mom, wait. Mom, wait. Mom, wait. Mom, wait.
And then talking about more performance stuff, like the IMAS stuff, maybe when the child comes in, the brows could be like fully up. You know what I mean? Kind of like an up pose, and then when they get into the place where they're about to say their line, maybe that's when we get more of like this shape, but just some kind of contrast from when they come into frame, come into screen, you know what I mean? And then when they start to deliver their line would be nice. I think just some kind of change, right? Some kind of A and B. So just maybe like when they come in, they're in more of like an up pose here, And then when they're here, I don't know if it's possible to get this center brow more pointed up, because right now it kind of feels like it's doing this and like coming down. So if possible, see if you can get that to like read more like the kind of like that puppy dog shape, that pleating shape when they come in. But anyways, let's jump on to the next part.
I told you before. I told you before.
So instead of the head shake here, now with this new read,
I told you before.
which is a nice read, it's more subtle. Like I hear the disappointment in the voice, right? Like
I told you before.
what that audio suggests to me, and maybe you can keep the head shake, but maybe it's much smaller. But what I feel the line suggests is that maybe this character is a little bit more upright, and then when they say "I told you before," you know, the B part of that phrase would be maybe like we see the shoulders drop a little bit. Maybe we see a little bit of like collapse, like a little bit of a rolling forward of the torso, like like you want to feel this character deflate a little bit, and like we can express that through the shoulders and the torso, but we can also express that like through the head dropping. You know what I mean? I don't want you to feel like you have to re-architect everything, but maybe it's just like a little added something into this is that we're getting a little bit of like, oh, I told you before, like I just performed it with my body, but it's kind of like almost like like if you sigh, there's just going to be a slight sinking or a slight deflating to what's happening. And then I would make the head shake, I think we talked about this maybe a little bit, like much smaller and kind of like a little bit. If it's small, it's almost like internal, like it's not performative of the mom to the kid, where the mom wants the kid to see it, but it's just like it's internal of the mom, because the internal thought of the mom is like, I can't believe this, like I can't believe that this kid has disobeyed me like this, right? So it's just the mom expressing disappointment that like her best efforts haven't been enough to guide this kid away from the dangers of superhero worship, right? Of superhero admiration. After everything that's happened, like she's kind of failed in making it her job, which she sees as like to protect her own child. You know what I mean? From these dangers, she's ultimately come up short. And so as much as she's disappointed in the actions of the child, she's also disappointed in herself and her own parenting ability, right? So that's kind of how I see this new read, and I know that maybe that's reading a lot into it.
I told you before.
But just kind of like a sigh with like a really small head shake, like I told you before, from the back. I think it's going to communicate everything that you're looking to communicate.
I told you before.
And then, maybe it'd be a good time to kind of clean up this hand shape. It feels like kind of visually complex. There's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of negative space between the fingers. So I think it kind of like draws more attention to itself. There is an opportunity to maybe do a little bit of acting there, but I don't know if you really want to draw, because you don't really want to draw attention away from like the head and the posture deflation, maybe, if that's something that you agree with is like maybe a way to go. So then this hand could just be a simpler kind of like relaxed finger hand, perhaps. You know what I'm saying? That is not my favorite drawing of a hand, but what are you gonna do? Anyways,
I told you before. I told you before.
and maybe too, like what to do with the child during this
I
bit.
told you before.
We do want to leave the child kind of not competing for attention from the parent.
I told you before.
Maybe it can also just be like a little tiny deflation, a tiny settle into something like, oh, the mom, wait, I'm too late. I thought I could like stave off this thing that I know is coming, so maybe if like the head just dips a little bit, these things can actually communicate a lot. You know what I mean? Anyways, it's just something, maybe some keep alive and stuff. I see what you're doing with like the hand dropping slowly. Keep alive is really hard because it's easy for it to feel like really spliny and stuff, you know what I mean? So maybe instead of just like having the hand rotate down here, you can have it more sync like straight down, and that would get this involved a little bit. It would change the angle of the elbow a little bit, and then the hand could like sink down in a more kind of like natural manner. And then you can have it, the spacing on the hand, instead of being so even, it could start off like with the ease in and then get kind of fast and then ease out, and then you actually have it go kind of from an A pose to a B pose, even though you're really living within the same kind of pose.
I told you before.
You get a little something with the body involved in there. All right, moving forward.
I don't want these things in our home. I don't want...
Let me look at the mom's turn. I feel like I didn't really look at that.
I don't want these things in our home.
Okay, that's a nice phrase right there to take a look at.
I don't want these things in our home.
Cool.
I don't want these things in our home.
So this is largely working.
I don't want these things.
I feel like on the turn, and I know animation is kind of the... Oops. I accidentally... Okay. On the turn, it feels like the mom is turning with the whole body kind of at once. And I think perhaps the way to break this up is kind of, especially if we're like looking at the bow as like a landmark here, you can leave the bow in place and start rotating the torso, but have the bow lag behind. So it feels like, if somebody's turning, it should be one, the head can lead, right? Two, the torso kind of follows. And then lastly, like the cog, like kind of catches up to everything. And then if we want to imply that there's a step happening in this turn, which you probably do, there probably would need to be a step happening. Then when that cog starts turning and stuff, we're also going to need like a little bit of up and down. So how I imagine it would work with the mom, stepping wise, is that she's kind of like this, right? And then ultimately we're turning to something like this. Maybe this isn't 100% accurate. Right, so the first thing that would happen to get from this A to this B is that this foot would probably swing around first and get into this position, right? So that's going to require like a small weight shift. So this foot here is still planted. That's where the weight is still facing whatever direction. Sorry that this is maybe this drawing is getting a little confusing. But yeah, that foot, the screen left foot would have to step into position, and then the right foot would would then have to take a step to come into this pose and this position to make that full turn. You know what I mean? So you don't need to actually animate all that, but you need to imply it with kind of like, you know, the mom would need to load up this foot with the weight first in order to free up this foot so that she could reposition it. So we would have to see probably like a slight movement screen right. And you know, you may be able to get the hips involved there too, because if they're loading up this, let me see if I can imagine what's going on underneath with the anatomy here. You know, like this hip would probably be pushed up slightly as the weight is being fully transferred to this leg, while this one can get free a little bit to reposition itself, you know what I'm saying? And then once this leg positions itself, then the hips would do the opposite thing. It would free up the screen right leg to do what it needs to do. Maybe then the hips, you know, would counter in the other direction, and then they would have to like even out. So all those mechanics, you just want to imply those, right?
I don't want these.
On this turn, and I know it's a lot.
I don't want these things in our home.
But what I do like about your timing
is
it starts slow and then it gets snappy at the end.
I don't want.
That is really interesting timing. It's appealing timing. It's nice to look at. You know what I mean? So that's great.
These things in our home.
And then how she's leaning forward and
I
everything.
don't want these things in our home.
Seems nice. But there may be an opportunity here to introduce like a little overlap. So as like, I don't know if you want to lead with the head or trail with the head, whatever makes more sense to you. Like try to act it out at your desk or at your computer. Maybe it makes sense to me to lead with the head a little bit. And we're just talking about a little bit. So here when the chest rolls forward, the head and neck seem locked in with it. So what you want to do is precede this rolling with maybe just a little bit of the head coming forward like this, and starting the journey earlier than the chest. And that'll make everything feel kind of loose and less stiff and a little bit more organic and realistic. So just lead with the head. And the head can even like get to the destination more or less just a little bit ahead of the torso. That'll also help. So the neck will be rotated more forward until the torso gets there, and then you have this nice little like up lean on the head, which is great. Like you can keep all that stuff, but it's just a way to kind of break that up. And then real polishy stuff on the body is like, watch like this hand spacing here, because when it starts to move forward, it really like seems to kind of like jump forward quickly when I watch it at speed. No, it's probably fine. Never mind all that. Don't worry about it. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's great. So looking at the kid throughout this section, yeah, that's great. I like the up and down, the implied steps in here. Feels nice. What I would do is maybe just to get a little breakup again of like the body and stuff, is I would have, I'm just talking about small bits, small amounts. Maybe have the upper torso just kind of drag forward, and the head can drag even more than the upper torso. You're always looking for ways to like kind of offset these major parts of the body, because then it will give you, I probably drew that head way too big, but anyways, it'll make things feel looser. And so when the cog settles here, like right around here, maybe the torso hasn't fully arrived at this pose yet, so you're just trying to delay these things. And maybe this is stuff you know already, and if it is, then you know already. But yeah, but then in these few frames, that's when like the torso arrives into position, and then the head arrives into position like a frame or two later. It doesn't have to be a ton. Like, you don't want to make it like some noodly, overlappy fiesta, but but you kind of do want to keep an eye out for all that stuff, because it'll keep your characters feeling like really loose. You know what I mean? And like organic and natural. But anyways, these are like tiny notes. I feel like overall all this stuff is working really well. So let's move on forward. Oops.
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this. Mom, don't...
Okay, cool.
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
So this new read,
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
the kid's performance feels much...
Mom, wait.
There's a mom wait. It's pretty subdued and reserved.
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
But now you can tell in the vocal performance that the character's getting a little bit more agitated, a little bit more upset.
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
So maybe I would encourage you to push the performance a little bit to be just a little bit broader and a little bit bigger, because it feels now that the audio is like justifying like kind of a larger response.
Mom, don't make...
And it can be something as simple as...
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this. Mom.
You have this nice bit here with the torsos when they say mom. Maybe that needs to come sooner. This lean forward and up. Maybe that needs to come on mom now. And then the more you push it like up, even if it's just a little bit, it may fit like the audio maybe just a little bit more.
Don't make a big deal out of this.
And then I would also... I would make this hand gesture a little bit sharper with what the audio read suggests to me is that...
Don't make a big deal out of this.
That feels like a little soft to me. So I would make that a bit sharper on deal probably.
Don't make a big deal out of this.
Which you have it going on deal. I would just make it like, I would just steal some frames out of there to make it a little sharper, and you could also have a little bit of overshoot and settle to make it seem more forceful when that hand like comes down on deal. You know what I mean? Let me look at the mom's performance throughout this section.
Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
I think the mom's great. Let's move on to the next section.
Don't speak to me with that attitude. Don't speak to me with that attitude.
Yeah, that feels nice.
Don't speak to me with that attitude. Don't speak to me with that attitude.
I like the little, really love what you're doing with her eye mask on Don't Speak to Me.
Don't speak to me with that attitude.
There's a nice little sharp, and then you like relax out of it. I really like that. I think that's really successful. I feel like the eyebrow raising here is maybe a little late. Like maybe it needs to come up on that. And I feel like you're good. You need at least an in-between or two for this eyebrow change. Let me see about how it resolves.
With that attitude.
Yeah, I think on attitude here, I would go a little bit more than where's the mom's been previously, to show that there's sort of some escalation of frustration or anger happening in the brows in this moment. So that's great. I'm just gonna say in between the brows and start it a little earlier. I don't know why I feel the need to write down the notes. And then go into a more extreme. Let me watch the kid through this section. Cool. This on the kid feels really sharp. Oh wait, what am I responding to? Yeah, this feels really sharp on the kid, this like little down and up and back. I would take out this sharpness because I feel like it's going to compete for attention from the mom. I would just make this a little bit softer. But I like overall like the feeling of it. What is nice about what's going on through this section is I feel like the torso and everything and the neck has like some overlap or some anticipation to what the body and everything is doing. So yeah, those are my major thoughts. It's really cool. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing your note now talking about the mouth shapes. Yeah, cool. Sorry, I didn't focus on the lip sync much at all here. So let me focus on that. So let me take a look overall. Sorry, I get so into the body mechanics.
Mom, wait.
I told you before.
So that mom wait.
Mom, wait.
It's hard to see the lip shapes because the character is moving, but maybe if you bring them in quicker. I'll talk about M's in class, but I feel like we could use more compression here. So I'll talk about that in class. Make sure to remind me if I don't, but I'm really hoping I will, because I know that's something I specifically want to talk about. But when you go into an M shape, it may be nice to get kind of like, you really want to show this compression happening here. So you may want to bring up the corners. You may even want to then in the following frame, I'll turn off ghosting, is show that that upper lip has moved up, you know, and that the lower lip has moved up. So we're getting this idea that there's a compression happening here. It's hard to draw it, of course, when I'm trying to represent this on 3D, but I will demonstrate that in class. Yeah, this is cool, but if there's any way, so right now what I'm seeing is it feels like there's a sharp line at the corner, and I can look at your rig specifically now that we have the G drive thing, and this is like a flat bottom shape here. So this kind of feels like what the mouth is doing here for the shape, but what I think we would want to try to see is getting this more round here, right? And then also round on the bottom. So however, I know it's easier for me to draw than it is to actually pose, but if we can hit more of like this shape here, so I feel like that's kind of what you have, and that would kind of be one of our target shapes that we would want to try to make from this angle. Easier said than done, of course, but I can take a look at your rig specifically. That might be a helpful thing to do in class, just to show everybody.
Wait.
Okay, cool. And then looking at this shape, weight, I wonder, like right now, this comes to a point. I wonder if there's a way to kind of get it to be a little bit more rounded and open on the corner. You know what I mean? Try to get it something more like this. Again, easier for me to draw than it is necessarily to pose, but I can go in there and we can take a look at this. We could even maybe take a look specifically at your file in class to see if that would be helpful, to see how we can like push some of these shapes. Maybe that's the thing to do. Yeah, but it looks like your timing is great on this.
Mom, wait.
I told you.
Yeah, let me look at the mom.
I don't want these things in our home.
That looks great. Especially if you've never done lipSync before, this looks really amazing. I'm impressed. So for this eye, I think I would get into this shape a little bit sooner. Like there's a lot of anticipation you can have in a mouth, in a bit of dialogue. So I think it'll look good if, I don't know why I'm drawing, but maybe on this frame here, you're almost already in this pose. So don't, that shape's great, but here I want to see the bottom teeth, I think, like touching up against these teeth. Like it should be like kind of a closed mouth. Let's see. Should be kind of like a closed mouth thing. You know what I mean? Maybe something like that. It's not exactly correct, but to show that the teeth are together for the N or the T, don't. And then for these, I would open the mouth more here. Let's see. I don't know why I'm being so... Like I just want to see contrast between this being the T, and then you can close again on the S. And I don't think it would be a bad idea on the S again to show that the teeth are like actually touching. So maybe what you have to do is pull this bottom lip down a little bit to show the teeth more. It feels like you're going into the eye on things a little soon. So maybe, you know, you can also keep showing the teeth, that same pose or something close to that same pose for a little bit longer. But the timing feels nice, you know what I mean? There are some times where I've noticed, like here, like the bottom lip kind of seems to grow in volume, you know what I mean? So you want to keep an eye out for that too, like you don't want... But we can also go through the shapes in your shape library that you built. Take a look at those. Anyways, thanks for calling that out. Let me take a look at...
Big deal out of this. Mom, don't make a big deal out of this.
Okay, yeah, so with the kid and their mouth is when they say deal. I think that really feels like something that has to be like a larger because it's higher in its volume, I feel like you're going to need a bigger shape to kind of represent these. When they're speaking louder, you kind of want a larger shape. They're going to need to open their mouth more. They're going to be a little bit more like animated. I don't know. That's awful. Yeah, so just when the volume and like that feels like a very small shape. And that might be true too on this. You know, that it just needs to be larger. Especially if they're angry and stuff like that. Alright, cool. Let's look at her last phrase.
Don't speak to me with that attitude.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more in detail. We can talk about this phrasing in class, because this isn't a good one. That's where it's like dense.
Speak to me with that attitude.
If that's all right with you to wait until we're in class, and then I can get more detailed on this. Yeah, just because I've always been going like over a half hour. That's probably plenty to chew on. But this is all great. Keep up the good work. Keep the forward progress rolling. I think this is looking really strong. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your next submission. I look forward to seeing you in class. All right.